Alrighty, and we are live Wednesday night, a couple days late, but back for the Leonis report for the new week of content releases. Good evening, JB. Good evening, everyone to watching live and post recording. How's it going tonight, man? How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Getting back to everything here today. Had a long extended weekend with the family up at the beach, and just kind of been ringing out the summer here and with the family. So was a good time. How about yourself? How was the weekend?
It was good, pretty low key, pretty same as usual. Some video gaming, some errands around the house, trying to catch up on sleep. The old rigmarole of my weekly routine. But unfortunately, summer coming to a close. I really should be doing more with the summer, the waning summer hours. And it was a nice weekend too, so I don't have any excuses weather-wise. But yeah, unfortunately, that's all I did.
I know it's only a matter of time before we're kind of stuck in the cold winter here in the icy tundra up here in New England in the winter time. So
Yep.
enjoy it while it lasts.
I know I missed out on getting my summer tan to last for the next couple months, but I'll find some way to recover that, I hope. But
I did get a little bit of color. This is probably about as tan as I get because I am I'm a pale person. So
yep, and that happens. My girlfriend, yeah, my girlfriend and I, she's Scottish and so very fair skin, and so we have a fun dichotomy where I just tan and roast in a good way in the sun, and she walks outside and like dies.
yeah, the sunburn.
Exactly. But we had a lot of stuff to cover today. The game has been uh, kind of in flux because of a couple content changes with things being canceled. But regardless, and real quick to veil grace, we live in Massachusetts, so we're not far off from you in Connecticut. We are in New England. But today's topic lineup, we will go over Garuda, both the Vision card and the Esper. Veritas of the Bolt got released. Veritas of the Flame got a 140. A new accessory got dropped for them as well, which we've been looking forward to. Some Reliquary updates on the weapons, some limit break upgrades we'll go over, a little bit about the Reincarnation Festival ending here and a giveaway that they're doing, and then just some PvP news. We have a couple topics we wanted to quick hit, go over, and some JP news, things related to Trials of Mana and Crimson Wizard, and some speculation on future units. But before we get into all of that, we'll kick things off here with the big release of the week, which is the Garuda Esper and Vision card. This is one that it's a nice 2-for-1. Obviously, it's a hollow vision card, so it does come in at that above average cost to acquire. But I do like the fact that it does have the Esper. It does kind of make it a little less punishing for me in terms of cost, just when you kind of get more bang for your buck, if you will. But this vision card, it does have the 4 classes on it, which you always look for, and I agree it's a good jumping off point. It's for bow, katana, spear, and staff black mage. And for the party attributes, it's a 30 human killer on magic attacks, 16% physical resistance to wider the AoE, and 35% luck. And there is a Guild War hollow effect here too, where it's an additional 15% crit rate. I am a fan of this card. It actually is the second 35% luck card that Staff Black Mage had. The Tifa Vision card from the Advent Children one. I thought it's very interesting that they have 2 different 35% luck cards because this was a historically rather inaccurate class of characters. But, I think Katana here is obviously eating good as well, where Katana and Staff Black Mage already had 2 of the best selections of vision cards in the game and overlap in the game. And Spears certainly did too. They kind of have been left by the wayside for the past, I don't know, couple months. But I know with the Ramada upcoming here, they wanted to include her, I believe. And Bo, same thing for White Lotus. Fina being eligible units here as well. That's kind of the recap of it. I know you've been looking at this card for weeks now. Any initial impressions about it? What are you thinking?
I think it's pretty solid. I think as you said, it's the second luck card for Black Mage, which it kind of allows them to play some semi evasion if you want to go that route. Especially with Shrek out, her luck is actually pretty substantial.
Yep.
So with two luck cards, she can wear the winner's clothes and be pretty evasive out there, kind of like you would do with Sephiroth and several other units. So that's pretty solid. I think it also, you can bring in Dario and Katana like you were mentioning. So I do like that as well. And there is definitely more of a need for Dario right now with Shrek's presence in the meta. So yeah, I think it's a, especially anytime when you can get the card with the Esper on top of that, I always kind of prefer those cards. You kind of get a little bit more value there for your Visior spend. Quite a lot of units here overall. You can see kind of bleeding down into the smaller heads there on this infographic. But yeah, I picked it up. I pulled for this one today. We were actually going to be doing a pull session for this live on the on the show, but we both forgot about it. So rip for our content.
Yep. 4 years of habits don't die easily, but we
I
will
know.
we will try to do that at some point to do a little pull war. We don't ever do that, quite frankly, and thought it'd be fun just to take a random vision card and attempt it. But yeah, no, I'm a fan of this too. The thing for me, and I wanted to use this time to talk about this, the physical AoE wide resistance. Someone asked me about this to say, is this a main slot potential vision card? Because obviously we historically have thought of main slot cards as AoE, res, unit res, and agility only. And the way that I like to think about this is that right now they've introduced AoE penetration into the game. Sephiroth and Cloud, most noteworthy, have it most reliably out of all the cast of characters. And so if you figure, I'm just taking a random number here, take 25% AoE pen, just throwing that out there. If you take a card that has 20 AoE res and assume that 25% of that's going to be penetrated, it's really only 15 AoE res. And so that's roughly comparable here percentage wise. It just unfortunately becomes a pick your poison. AoE resistance covers both physical and magical, or this covers only physical. The difference is that this kind of resistance, like it's equivalent. It's what I'm trying to say. It's that it is a candidate, and when you have other very good stats on it, it sometimes becomes worth it. And I think that 35% luck is enough to tip the scale for me. But at the end of the day, it just depends on your matchup, though. If obviously you're seeing a lot of Gilgamesh, this really just doesn't do anything versus that. But I do think it is a main slot contender, and even if not, I don't think it's the worst subslot vision card. Obviously, you wouldn't do it for the physical wide res. At that point, in a subslot, you would be doing it for the modifier of the human killer and the luck and just the subslot crit rate and maybe some of the agility points. But I still think it's a good subslot card considering all the extra things you get from it. And I do think it's a valid pull for anyone that's using Staff Black Mage and Katana. I know Sephiroth is very popularly used as a pseudo evade unit, but when he does, he's typically beholden to the Sorrow Vision card. And I think this does alleviate some of that, where you can now be a little more flexible with how you make him get to that level of evasion. It's not exactly the same because the Sorrow Vision card does have some extra evasion on it, and there are some attributes like the defense pen on it that you're going to be losing out on. So it is maybe a weaker Sephiroth comparatively speaking, but it's a great tool to put into the toolbox. And I do like it for Spear in general too, who has not gotten any love. I don't have any more high hopes for Spear at this point because all of, barring Ramada, all of the old Spear units are pre fourth anniversary, so their time is virtually gone, in my opinion. So any copium that was built up from units like Young Eld and Dialdo and God knows Fang, even like who knows, that's unfortunately gone. So I think Spear's kind of started from scratch. So this is a good building block for them for the future, but that's really all I'm thinking of. I do like Bow on it too. It's nice to have another Bow card for them.
Yeah, on the spear point, unfortunately, over in JP, we haven't seen Ramada's presence really uplift that, the older units in that group whatsoever. So um, that's kind of the state of things until those units kind of get up to par in terms of the next gen stat power creep. I was just going to say, like, a lot of times in those like semi evasion builds with Sephiroth, you might be looking at like Secrets of the Heart in the sub slot.
Yep.
So that's another, if you're using this card in the sub slot, you can eliminate that kind of older, frankly, not a very good card other than the evasion component. So um, I like it from that component. There is kind of a little bit of overlap with this card and the Shinryu vision card because that has the human killer as well. So you might want to, juggle around the cards and take advantage of both, frankly, if you're going to be taking advantage of Shrek and her follow-up attack. So, you can work and use both of them and get quite a nice accuracy bump on top of it.
Yep. Just before we move on to the Esper, this is very much a card catered to Shrek, where obviously the dexterity on here is part of that crit rate. And just, I'm sorry, the thing with the follow-up damage is that follow-up damage is so often reliant on actually landing the critical hit rate. It's basically double the damage in many instances. And so not only do you get the extra dexterity here, the 15 crit rate for the Guild War, but the human killer modifier is also a modifier that applies to follow-up attacks, where things like wind attack and magic attack do not apply. So this is a great vision card for that aspect of her kit. With Summer Resnick now in the fold and the ability to remove follow-up attacks, kind of neuters the value of this if you're seeing a lot of Summer Resnick, but conceptually that's where this really hits all the dots for her.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it's definitely worth pulling, especially if you've invested into Shrek. If you didn't go for Shrek, you can probably let this one wait, to be honest.
I would agree with that. And the Esper is honestly debatable for a best in slot Esper for her. It's a high contender. Bahamut is obviously still one of the best magic oriented Espers around, but this Esper's no joke either. This is 17 agility, so a little bit slower, but still relatively fast, all things considered. 91 dexterity is rather high for the board on an Esper. The skill tree, let me go to the builder here. The big thing, like many of the new Espers, there's a very unique node here in the bottom right, and this is an extra 20% unit res penetration, along with, what was it, 35% reaction block, which she already has 30% innately, I believe. So this gets her up to 65, not including any kind of truststone passes or anything. So that to me is a guaranteed angle of the tree. I know for me, I do like the idea of going the crit damage route as well as the crit rate route next, for the same reason as we were just talking about the follow-up damage. And then at that point, it really is a question, the human killer too, I'm sorry, getting that extra 5 modifier. And then at that point, it's a question, do you want to go for magic attack or wind attack, depending upon who's wearing it? You could also go for the ice resistance here, which would put you at a positive 5%, just to maybe make sure that Gilgamesh doesn't one-shot you, if you know what I mean. That can often be the difference, that extra 15%. But this is an Esper where I would entertain unlocking the extra SP in terms of wind espers, because in terms of wind espers, I think that Sildra is a half decent option to go for the SP potions, but the rest of these espers, I don't think you really need to hold on to your wind oriented SP potions. But yeah, this is an esper that I do like, and I do think there's some versatility with how you build the tree.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, if you're using it for like a general purpose Esper, I think like you highlighted, the crit damage and human killer are the most valuable magic attack. I do like that extra added bit of dex there on the base stats, because that's kind of tangible in terms of that crit rate that you're trying to amp up there. The stop resist is kind of nice too, because we still do see Glacier around in the meta. So yeah, I think it's definitely a useful one.
Yeah, I have some copium that I want to still test this. We were talking about that in the Discord, that this ability is very interesting. One of the things with Esper abilities, they don't often get used because they typically scale off magic damage. So most or all physical damage dealers will really never use this in auto PvP. And even magic units, it's rather debatable. But the ability on this, I think, is very interesting, that it's a 7,500 magic barrier. It also seals barrier break on the units in this very large diamond, in addition to all the great, 50% in perils and all the buffs. The key thing here though is building up the evocation damage part of the nodes, which we never do for auto PvP. But I am rather intrigued to see how her AI may prioritize this if you were to go this route of jacking up the modifier on the evocation, because it's at maximum 240% mod. That's where I got to test the damage calcs. But I think this is an interesting mid-fight Esper, quite frankly, to get a large imperil and a free magic barrier.
And the fact that the enemy won't be able to destroy the barrier, you know, after that is super valuable. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, you know, in terms of getting these outs, unfortunately, the imperils and things like that come post damage. So, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
times the units will have skills kind of within their kits innately that will do more damage. And, you know, you tend to see these only come out like as a finisher type attack, you know,
Right.
to finish somebody off. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that if anybody in the chat, if you've already been using this, have you noticed that you know, Shrek or other units are going towards this attack? You know, definitely let us know.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, just to your point, I did mean personally, specifically for Shreka, because she's such a unit-oriented character. I agree. Most units that have access to diamond AoEs, which most spellcasters do, you're right. AI wise, from a damage calculation perspective, they're going to likely pick a different diamond attack than this one. But Shreka, who's really unit oriented and only has one like smaller AoE, this might have a chance to actually be used if you can hit 3 units in it. I think that's one of the few times the damage calc actually might be in her favor.
Does have the additional range too, 6 range, where I think she only gets up to 5 innately
Good point.
too.
Good point. Either way, could be copium, but I don't normally talk about this on an Esper, but this was the first that I actually saw. Maybe there's a thread there to follow, but uh, we'll keep going along. I do approve both these. Solid pull. We got some news on other Veritas releases this week, where Veritas with a Bolt is a unit that once you complete the Reliquary quest, I believe, they are a S unit that you can acquire the medals. Is it from Guild War?
Guild War.
Guild War,
Yep.
yes. So, unfortunately, one of the slower acquisition types, but it is a bow-oriented unit, a 100 cost lightning unit. Unfortunately, it's still rather incomplete as they do not have the 140 or the limit break yet, so we don't know what the upgrades are going to be there. But we can at least kind of highlight this unit. This is a interesting unit to say the least, because obviously, bow number one is immediately interesting to everyone because we always like to see, is this the one? But when we look at really like the primary utility, they do come with a large diamond buff here. That is a defense pen and spirit pen of 30% for allies. So I like that it's versatile for both kinds of teammates. She does have re-raise here. We were looking for that before. It's on this ability. It is also AoE res pen of 40% for 4 turns, which is rather noteworthy. And because she's a ranged unit, I would tend to think that she's out of dispel range for much of the fight. So I would expect some of these buffs to last for a while. It grants some CT for self, and there is a re-raise remove ceiling. So this buff is very strong, quite frankly. It goes really well with her main ability that is a diamond, so that AoE pen comes in very handy. It's a 100% hit chance, and it dispels follow-up attacks here, which are obviously very pertinent for Gilgamesh and King Mon's Limit Break and Shreka. If you don't have Summer Resnick, this is a unit maybe down the line can fill in that role. But alternatively, she can dispel courage here. She does have some damage amplification means with the missile res pen here, pre-attack here on the single target, but I don't see this one being used as often. Maybe so because it's the strongest unit attack, but I love that she's got 2 different guaranteed hits in the kit. I'm excited to see what the limit break and the 140 do for her. Oh, and I'm sorry, last thing. She's magic scaling. It's like Fina. It's a magic scaling bow unit. Important to call out.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's hard to fully judge. Like you said, there's no LB, no 140, even in JP to this point. Thankfully, we have gotten the upgrade to the guild medals for these units. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago. So we are now accruing, a better rate on those. It's still going to take a couple of months before she's even close to being ready. So by the time those updates come, she'll be close to getting online. Similar story that we've seen with the other Veritas units. I think in terms of the unit itself, the bare bones of it, it looks okay. I did notice that there was no way to reduce her movement like we've seen with many other ranged units.
Nope.
She doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry. She does have that. Okay.
Yeah.
As does, I missed that in the EX upgrade there. Okay, never mind that point. Scratch that.
Okay, cool.
She does have nice penetrations though. Like she's got the access to Spirit Pen, Missile Pen, and AoE Res Pen all baked in innately to her kit. She can get up with that additional range. I think she also, I don't think her buff gives her any additional range though, does
No,
it?
no.
So it's just a
Neither of
plus
them do.
2.
Yep.
So that's a little bit unfortunate. No, she can't get up to 3 or even 4 range like we've seen on some other missile units. Um, so we'll have to kind of see what the upgrades are. Maybe they'll improve that a little bit with some of the stuff coming down the line. But the utility is certainly nice. This gives an option outside of Resnick to dispel those follow-ups, and to do it from a long range and in that large AoE is super nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really overanalyze the Veritas units. I've never done character reviews on them, if only because it takes so long for them to come to fruition. And even at that point, I don't think they're impactful enough to really warrant it. It's still a fun mini game to build them up over time, and I think for an average player, it's nice to throw them in the arsenal. The one thing that I do like, though, about Veritas of the Bolt is that this unit is distinctly different than any of the other recent Lightning units. Whereas I think some of the other Veritas as of late, they kind of have some overlaps with what exists in their element. Like when I think of the Fire Veritas, I'm like, all right, another slashing unit for fire, great. When I think of the Earth Veritas unit, I'm like, all right, well, we got 2P and there's other like tanky style Earth units, but the lightning units overall, particularly the permanent pool, where if you uh sorry, limited, no, the permanent, there's really just like nothing like it, and they really don't have any love from like a newer unit perspective. So I think this is like one of the few Veritas units that comes in and does make the cast better. Probably not by much, but I like that angle of it.
I do like that, one of the original hallmarks of the lightning element was missile damage back with Fred and Nivlu and those guys. So yeah, it's kind of a return to form for lightning. We haven't seen that in a while. I like
Yep,
that.
absolutely. And just in terms of Veritas news, we did get the 140 live today for Veritas of the Flame. And I think this is a great example of why we often wait on these to make a final decision, because this is a pretty strong 140 that does make Veritas of the Flame far more useful. I mean, I still think it's rather niche because he is so strong anti-slash, but you're getting 15% AoE wide res for both types of physical and magic damage. And the ability upgrade here to Brutal Swing is that he's getting a damage absorb on it. Um, is that it? That might be it.
The modifier went up too.
The modifier up to 240. So definitely a more impactful ability overall. He has apparently gained some traction in JP in terms of usage overall. I could see that with the accessory, which we'll talk about in a second here. But I still don't love this unit, but I don't hate this unit as much, just given what he has here with the extra 15% slash res as well. That's very important because his main thing, again, why I say is very much anti-slash, is that his main ability here is to decrease enemy slash res pen of 40 for 3 turns. That's his main survivability. So it's kind of like Oberyn the Auspicious, quite frankly, which is why I have like tempered expectations, where Oberyn didn't come in and like shut down slash damage when I was trying to use him as of late. And I kind of get the same vibes from Veritas the Flame. So I'm a little jaded in that, but I don't think there's any doubt that he has some things that Oberyn doesn't, from modern day standards.
Yeah, I think that if you're seeing teams of like Sephiroth and Gilgamesh, this unit can perform pretty well into that
Yep.
team. As soon as you start seeing units like Shrek and other magic units, it's going to be much less of a good matchup for him because he is innately weak to magic. At I think he has a 5% negative. Not a huge weakness, but I mean, you see Gilgamesh and these units popping units with substantial magic resist for quite a lot of damage. So that definitely hurts his prospects a little bit. But the players over in JP seem to really like him, so I'm definitely going to try him out with the new accessory. That we'll talk about that here in a minute. But um, yeah, I think this is a nice upgrade for him.
Yeah, and why waste any time? Let's get into it. It's the Guardian Crystal. We've known about this for a little while. The way you can acquire this is actually by converting your Veritas metals, any of them, any of the 5 elements, you can convert them for recipes. Now, obviously, the ones you're still building, you don't want to do that. You want to use your Veritas metals for the unit you're building. But for Veritas units like the Wind, and in particular for Water, who most people have been placing rather high in Arena, you probably have a ton of Veritas the Water metals that I know you and I alone off my Veritas of the Water metals was able to +5 this today. Stat wise, honestly, it's not awful. I mean, 20 crit evade, that usually gets cut in half, or it kind of overlaps the trust stone, so that's not a hugely impactful stat, but it's really the box stats down here that these are percentages for all of the Veritas units that scale off their base stats, and they're not, game breaking, but they're the kind of stat increase that kind of gets them closer to 4th anniversary units. It's not perfect, but it also does free up some Trust Stone passive slots, where I know for me, like I routinely put HP percent and luck percent on my units. That's 2 free slots on my left side I can free up now, because these do not stack with those because they're the same kind of box stat. And the same can be said for the attack percent or the magic percent. So there is some Trust Stone flexibility that I appreciate. And some of these units do better than others. I know Veritas of the Earth and I think Fire like get nasty amounts of HP from this, above what they would have otherwise. The elemental chain res is fine. But the agility percent of 5% is fine too. It's not enormous, but that's like 2 to 3 agility points, enough to kind of keep them up with everybody. But this is an excellent accessory. It doesn't come without trade offs though, because you obviously have to give up a slot that you might use something else. And I'll kind of hand it off because I think that's the way you've been approaching this the most often. But yeah, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, do you want to bring up that screenshot? I messaged it over to you of the one I posted in Discord earlier today when I equipped the item.
Yeah.
But I think that illustrates kind of the substantial stat jump that you can get with this piece.
Yep.
So I didn't do any other trust stone optimization. Like obviously there is some overlap with some of these stats here that typically we've had HP and luck and dex and some of these things already baked into the trust stones. So that obviously I didn't change that here, but just at its face value, you can see a huge jump in HP here.
Which unit is this?
16. This is on Veritas of the Water. I just kind of put it on her instead of the Alex ring. So nice jump in dex, luck, agility, HP. Unfortunately, you do lose that flexibility of the accessory slot. So you can see I lose a ton of accuracy here. So I think that is kind of the one miss with these items for me. I do wish that they had at least some base accuracy on the piece, like maybe 15 or 20. So that way you could maybe put another 10 in the trust stone and offset the loss of, being able to use accuracy. So hopefully that maybe comes in a +6, but for now, I think some of the units that either rely on guaranteed hits or don't, you're not reliant on them for offense, like Veritas the Earth, for example. I think they're going to benefit the most. So yeah, I think it's overall it's nice. It does essentially get them to the next gen norms in terms of the stay, or at least in the ballpark. There is still you can quabble over like their base stats are still obviously lower, so like their ceiling is going to be a little bit less, but I think, ballpark is, they're close enough.
I would agree. And just real quick, I quantified this earlier because I was curious. The accuracy loss here is showing a decrease of 43% accuracy. You're going from 99 to 56, but actually calcs the gains that you get from the dexterity and the luck. You actually end up gaining about 12%. So net effect, you're losing about 30% accuracy, not the full 43. So it is a little bit, but still 30% accuracy loss is noteworthy for sure. I love this though because one of my favorite things that I look for nowadays is as an HP number. I look for units to make sure that they can't get one tapped. 11999 damage cap, a little bit higher right now actually because of the what's the Orochi vision card. The Guild War Hollow effect increases damage cap. But for some units, I like the ability to not get one tapped in those dire situations. That if they're a courage unit or a re-raise unit or a healer or who knows what, oftentimes that second hit can be the difference. So this accessory, like on a unit like Veritas of the Water of all people, that's a very healthy amount of HP.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely makes her playable, especially as we're kind of leading more in towards a magic meta. So I was playing around with her a little bit today. Unfortunately, she still has some deficiencies against physical damage, so you kind of have to account for that. But otherwise, I think that she was actually doing pretty decent.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
noticed Crimson Lisa in the chat was talking about Jum and her magic resistance and kind of putting up a fight against Shrek. I've seen that in Arena a bit. I've seen more people kind of going back to Jum a little bit. That's always been her real niche. She kind of was an all around bruiser when she first came out, but really her specialty was always the magic, especially because she can debuff for 40% magic
Penetration.
penetration.
Yeah,
So that pretty much gets Shrek down to 0 or 10, I think, in most builds. So
it
that's
does.
huge against her.
Yeah, and I've actually been looking forward to that. As much as you want to see Joom fade into the sunset, because a lot of people might have been sick of her. I personally don't. I want her to still be a viable rock paper scissors unit, and it's too soon for those units to be not playable, if you know what I mean. So I like the fact that Joom is coming back. I've used her in arena as well to try to compete with this, and it works very well. Absolutely.
I
Uh,
think that the tough part is the follow-up damage. So like Joom needs some protection against that, whether it's Resnick or something else and if you can account for that, I think that she's a pretty good play.
yeah, I've been using with Resnick. I've been doing Joom, Resnick, and Cloud, and it's not the perfect synergy. They don't need much though. All they need is that buff from Resnick, the little bit of healing, and she's off obviously far away. Whether or not the aura applies, we would like to see the aura apply. Still try to make it work, but end of the day, it's still a good matchup.
Definitely.
Yeah, but we'll keep moving along in the topics here related to getting the Veritas of the Bolt. We got Reliquary quest updates here, and so the Assassin's Dagger and the Zeus Mace both got +6 upgrades. I'll be honest, I completed the stage today. I didn't have the Zeus Mace at all maxed. I finally got this maxed because I like this. I know Mace as I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Let me go to Assassin's Dagger first. So the big upgrade here is that it is getting an ability to inflict doom on basic attack here. I think that
No, that one it already had. It's
did it.
getting the
Oh fuck
the
me, you're right.
AP.
Yeah, the
It's
initial AP
getting
25. Thank you.
no, it had the initial AP. It's getting increased AP on crit hit.
Son of a bitch. You're right. I misread all
That's
of
the new
that.
effect.
That's a good effect.
It is, yeah. It kind of synergizes well with the initial AP of a substantial amount, 25. And unfortunately, there's just no good dagger units at the moment to use it with. So that's kind of the copium at the moment. So until Zidane or some other good dagger unit, get some upgrades, this one's kind of, you know, it's collecting dust. But I do like this for that effect.
I would agree. Out of all the daggers to pick from, I do think this is still a top tier choice. But to your point, on who? So like, uh,
Yeah.
irrelevant. The Zeus Mace though, I still think this one is debatable whether best in slot. There's a lot of units. The Dawn Lantern was just mentioned in chat. Got an exceptionally good upgrade. I do still think it's a great option. And obviously, to the same extent as daggers, mace units have kind of fallen by the wayside as of late. There really aren't many, if any, competitive mace units. Just a select few. But this is a good upgrade here. It's getting AoE pen of 15%, and the magic damage is going from 10% to 12%. I like this just as a pure offensive play. I think that's a valuable value add here for a mace unit.
It's pretty solid. I wonder if we'll ever see a physical mace units, because I know that like this one has a substantial amount of physical attack on it too.
Yeah.
So and like the party effects aren't necessarily magic focused. So
Nope.
um, I wonder if we'll ever see that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I did them anyway just because we're well overdue. But we are getting some limit break upgrades live today also. And unfortunately, they're for units that I do think won't see the light of day again. So it's Dark Fina, it's Hyo, and it's Jaden the Celebrated. And so for Fina's, what they're doing is they're actually making her Dispel occur pre-damage, which is very nice. That is a good upgrade. It's a 60% accuracy buff, which is fantastic. That's an enormous amount. And then it's also a 25% damage reduction on whoever she hits for physical type damage. It's still single target, so maybe you hit a tank, maybe you don't. But I do think it's a nice limit break upgrade. It's superior, but this is going to do nothing for the unit, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, this is really like a blast from the past.
Yeah.
We haven't seen this unit in over a year. Like basically, Alaya came out, absolutely blew her off the map, and we haven't seen her since. It's an okay upgrade. I would have liked to have seen a select 2 or some kind of multi-target, because you would like to get that physical reduction out onto multiple units and not just whoever has hate. So yeah, that's I agree. This unit's not going to do anything though.
I would have wanted to see Re-Ray Seal personally.
That
Where
would have
she's
been nice.
this is still her main, if only, type of survivability, quite frankly. The only kind in her kit. To do something to throw it in there, I don't think would have hurt her at all.
Like one of her claims to fame is that she can dispel runic, which is on exactly one unit in the game. So yeah,
Good old days. And
it is what
Hios,
it is.
same thing. This is a unit who I thought could have had a niche at the peak of the A2 meta with Greatsword, and he didn't come to fruition. And him not being useful then, he's not going to be useful ever, quite frankly. His main claim to fame was his very high AoE res, which has been power crept in the game currently. This I'll be honest is a very good limit break upgrade though. I believe nope, range is the same. It's getting an AP reduction. It's still a triple hit. It's getting AoE res pen of 40 though for 3 turns, and it's a 5,000 HP general barrier. I'll be honest, this is not awful, but this unit's still not in a really good spot. I think by the time you're even using this limit break, he's probably close to dead, if not already dead. So like, it is what it is.
I think it's pretty good. I think that for him to actually be viable, it needed one additional effect, like maybe also seal the barrier or even something else like that.
Yep,
Um, so yeah, it's okay, but yeah, he's just too far behind the curve that for this to matter. And greatsword, there's better options now. So
absolutely. And sadly, Jaden the Celebrated, not a unit that we're really seeing used well, even with the MA2 lately, which did give some good upgrades, quite frankly. 30 AoE res pen and 10% physical damage reduction. He's as close as you can hope for from a pre fourth anniversary unit, but he's still never hit that ceiling. And this is honestly a good limit break upgrade, but I don't think it does anything to really address the deficiencies that he had ahead of time. Objectively, this is better, no doubt. You're going from 58 to 43. We usually had this turned off because 58 AP absolutely destroys his AP count. So, not that this is significantly better, but that's part of the weakness. I like that they at least lowered that. It does have a removal of magic or AoE wide res, which is new tech. I do like this. It also gives himself courage and a quick 400 CT restore. This is a great limit break, all things considered, but I don't think it's enough to really fix what's going on here. Um, I like it. I'll still probably throw him in once in a while just for fun, but I don't see anything big here.
I think that's like with the between the MA2 being quite nice and this one being like an exceptional upgrade, he becomes probably one of the best, if not the best spear units in the game right now,
I'll agree with that.
until Ramada comes. Like he's right there with Eld as being probably the best spear unit. I think he's better than Fang. I mean, Volk is fine, but he's a different role,
Apples to
kind of a
oranges.
different conversation.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think he could, if Spear were to ever ascend and get somebody, beyond Ramada, he could maybe be that third guy and potentially be in that mix. I think the upgrades are good enough for that conversation. Right now, though, Spear is just too far behind the power creep to be played, I think, in a meaningful way.
What Shrek is Piercer as? Do you remember?
Mm, I don't recall off the top of my head. It's probably not very good.
Oh, okay, 10%.
10%.
Okay, all right, never mind. I was okay, just thinking out loud. Nah,
Like Jaden does have like that niche of like the high wind resistance,
that's what I was kind of going with. Yeah, yeah,
but like in my experience, Sephiroth just blows him away.
he does. Just
So
destroys.
I don't know. It's tough.
You're right. This would be a play for seeing a lot of winding coming somehow. Duran or Dario, who knows what that case may be, but yeah.
He
Um,
doesn't hold up quite as well against Sephiroth as Gilgamesh does with the barrier because he doesn't have as high like of an AoE res or debuff weakening like Gilgamesh does, which really kind of substantially shuts down some of that damage.
agreed, agreed. But yeah, we'll keep going on here. We have a couple other more general topics. One of them is the Reincarnation Festival giveaway. And you know what? I'll actually share the screen again real quickly. We got news today that they're running a little bit of a campaign for those that have been reincarnating units during this time period. That you're getting entered into a prize pool depending upon the number of times you've reincarnated. And so if you were 10 or more, you're getting entered, and I'm sorry, the prize for all of these are UR select mind spheres. The lowest tier is 200, the next tier is 800, the highest tier is a full 1600, and the number of potential winners, if you were 10 or more, you could be one of 100, 40 or more, you could be 50, or I'm sorry, am I saying that right? You'd be one of 50, or 80 more, you could be one of three. So three people are going to win this 1600 Mindsphere ticket. I don't hate this. I mean, I don't know how useful it is, but I like that they're doing something. I don't think this hurts the game. I don't think this is anything for power creep. I think it's a nice little surprise reward for whoever's doing it. I don't think it's an incentive to go ahead and reincarnate your units. I wouldn't all of a sudden go blow a bunch of reincarnations to win this. But as a consolation prize for people doing it, oh, I like this. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a nice bonus. I
Yeah.
think that we were looking at it. It's hard to tell from the writing here whether it's like one of the Reincarnation Festival units specifically, or whether it's like any unit you can select 1600. If I had to guess, it's probably like related to the Reincarnation Festival and probably going to be one of those, 8 units. But at that point, like if you've already invested into those units, it became like this grand prize here could become essentially 300 transcendent mind spheres if you trade them in, which is actually pretty cool. Like that's essentially what like they sell the 200 of them for 2K paid. So, that's a pretty nice grand prize, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. Two thumbs up for them doing this. So they don't have to do it. I don't think it changes anything in the game other than making 200 people happy. Like I think that's a
Yeah,
win. Yeah.
nice little bonus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But in addition to that, we'll talk about some PvP news. And so we'll kick things off with the limited guild war that wasn't, as he so eloquently put it. Limited guild war was canceled again. Apparently, there was a bug. We don't know. I didn't hear about this, quite frankly. I didn't see it anywhere that people were able to mock against defenses that were already set, something to that effect. And so they just outright canceled all of it. Do you know more about what happened than that, or no?
So I'm pretty sure what happened was that Justin watched our episode about limited guild war and he passed on the message to the Gumi dev team. They implemented this bug into the game directly due to our feedback. So hence limited guild war is canceled and
You're,
everybody is happy.
you're welcome.
So that is the impact of the Leonis report right there,
Take it.
front and center.
Take it. Made up bugs. I love it. Accurate. But yeah, so now we're technically back into the Vermilion Bird Cup, which was supposed to have ended. It's not now, just because we're back to regular Guild War. It's live today. You're all in it right now. I'm happy for that. We've talked about this. We have no love for limited Guild War. The sooner it ends, the better. Particularly for a week where people that want to use Shreka, now you can use her free reign in regular Guild War, not have to worry about any limited Guild War limitations. Um, yeah, I'm happy for it. Whatever.
Unfortunately for the guilds that were going to be getting first place, it is a 500 viz deficit than that you're just getting the 2K compensation. So that's kind of bad. It feels kind of bad because that's actually a couple in a row now limiteds that have been canceled, I think, right? Because I wasn't
Yeah,
the last one also canceled,
I think so.
or at least or two of the last three. I know that there's been a couple recently that have been canceled. So I'm not sure what's going on with the development team. I think this is honestly some of the impacts of like them downsizing the team, and we're kind of seeing that front and center, and that's a little bit unfortunate. It just so happens that it's on a game mode that right now it's kind of on our naughty list. So it's at the end of the day, it's whatever.
Right, exactly, exactly. But in addition to other PvP news, we do have a class match running this week. The cost limit I thought was interesting is 240, and so that's typically like a 100 cost and maybe 270 costs, or people are getting creative with the 50 costs. It is the snow map, which is kind of a throwback map from the early meta days. I do think it's a fun map. I don't think there's a ton of like mind games to go on in terms of initial placements. Maybe a little bit. Where maybe you can put a bow unit behind the mountains to keep them kind of locked in there. Obviously, there's some bait potential depending upon whether you put your units on the left side of the hill versus the right side of the hill, so they get right in the open right away. Jump 2 units certainly have a very different experience with this map running straight ahead. I'm happy so far. I've won 9 out of 10. I was ranked 2 this morning. I've probably fallen since then. I lost to McCrane. Shout out to McCrane from the WDL. I was
Oh,
actually I
nice.
was running a I'm so stupid. I was running a Balo, Kingmont, and Bradley team because that's what I was running last time. It is running house, right? And I played McCrane, and he was running the same team, but it was not a Bradley. It was a Cipher. And I had a moment like, why the fuck am I not using Cipher? I put Cipher in, and I've run the table since then. So he beat me with the Cipher team. It's way better, way superior, and been a lot of fun.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's bold running an Earth team when Shrek is now on the scene.
I haven't seen a single Shrek. No,
Wow, okay.
in class match, nothing.
I'm running Shrek in class match.
Son of a bitch.
Um, Shrek and Gilgamesh and Phoebe. So Wiccan.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah. So yeah, I'm 15-0 so far. So far it's working well.
I like it.
I saw a question in the chat about the impact of Resnick and as it pertains to Shrek, and we will actually be talking about that here very
Next,
very soon.
that was a
So
literal talking point you wanted to bring up. So you guys are way ahead of
yeah,
us. Yeah, I like it.
yeah.
But
So I
no,
guess you want to dive that into, or anything else to say about class match then, or
no,
you
that's
want
it. Class match is cool. I'm appreciating it. I unfortunately it's at the mercy of some of the 50 cost units, whether it's Balo or SR Little Leela. Props to you for using Phoebe. That's not a unit that I. Are you doing manual though or auto?
to? Oh yeah, gotta be manual.
Okay, all right. So that's clearly why I haven't seen her as much. Thank God. That means I won't play you and your Shrek. I won't see you at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of 50 cost units is obviously very limited and has a disproportionate level of impact, for better or worse, in these situations. But yeah, we'll move on. We're gonna revisit Resnick here because we do know that upon her initial release, the impressions were mixed, and it wasn't any fault of her own. It was really the maps that they chose to showcase her because her aura, which is probably one of the most exciting things about her. It's not the most exciting, but the ability to essentially nullify Curse and nullify Frostbite, which is not game breaking, but it's certainly annoying and can win fights. But really, the Curse, and there's a height limitation to that aura of only one square height. And so the maps that we were playing her on were very hilly and uphill and topographically not efficient for her, that the aura really wasn't working at all. And so the Curse component of it was still very frustrating to play against, considering that's something she should be strong against. But now that's normalized a little bit. We obviously got the Orochi Esper, which also bumps up her curse resistance if you're using that Esper on her. So that was also one of the things the very first week she was released. Even if your teammates didn't get cursed, she would still get cursed like 30% of the time, which kind of sucked. But I do think this is still an excellent unit. I think she's working exactly as we predicted. I still think it's the kind of thing where she doesn't hard counter any one specific unit. She does something to all of them a little bit differently. I think the other big thing for her is the remove follow up. Obviously, that's not rocket science here, but you have two meta defining units in Gilgamesh and Shreka that you can remove the follow up attack and pass it on to allies. That I think that's a major chip in the armor at taking them down a peg. That yeah, I think she's excellent. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that the Guild War map that we flashed back onto, and then we're back now. It's has been a little bit tougher to get her to work. I think it takes some reps. It takes a lot of tuning to really dial it in, and then maybe you can get it to work halfway decent. I think where I was really seeing her be the unit that we thought that she could be was in Arena the last week or two, where you know frustrating unit to play against, especially if you are really trying to play that meta team that with the follow-up damage. She can absolutely shut it down. She she's a very influential unit, a very strong unit. I think that's if you didn't get her, I think you might struggle a bit against these follow-up units for some time. For everybody that does have her, I think that it opens up your box quite a bit. I've seen a lot more greatsword. I've seen more meaningful play out of Cypher and kind of the warrior group as well. So I think Cloud has been one of the big benefactors too of Resnick, especially and kind of um, even kind of going against Resnick because she a lot of times will reset the play by killing all the debuffs on the units with her limit burst.
Yep,
Cloud is a unit that he likes to have debuffs out there, but he doesn't need them because he has that baked in area resist penetration
yep.
of 60%. And I've noticed that he can really do well in a lot of those matchups.
Really good call out there. And who was in chat here? 1 second. Jackie Licious said it feels like they ninja patched her. There's no ninja patch. That's purely we can explain exactly what was going on. It's really map dependent, which that's actually fine. If there's certain maps that she's not good for, I don't hate that because not every unit should be amazing on every single map. There should be some map influence on which characters have strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, I think as a book unit does synergize with a variety of different weapon classes. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, you don't need her to synergize at all with the vision cards, quite frankly. She's got an immense amount of utility on that buff she can give to teammates. The aura applies no matter what. And the healing, obviously, she heals no matter what. I think one of the big things too is her vision card. Having that 150 CT mid fight has been game changing in many instances where
Oh yeah.
I'm like not sure how the turn order is going my way, and all of a sudden you lapse someone because of it. Obviously, the free AOE res of 20 certainly is helpful. It's a very powerful heal. That vision card ability changes fights as well. So excellent unit.
Yeah, I can't count the amount of times that I had a clear layup win and that LB, or sorry, the vision ability completely swung it the other way because they got the jumped up in the turn order and were able to then take me out. So hugely impactful vision card even in the sub slot. Um, I did want to say one point about Shrek and Gilgamesh and kind of their interaction with Resnick and her disabling the follow up. At least kind of initially from what I've seen so far, I feel like Shrek gets countered by it a lot harder than Gilgamesh does, because I feel like Gilgamesh's damage is still very good even without the follow-up. It's crazy how
Yes.
he'll just come in and he'll do his reckoning, he'll do his Metsu, he'll do whatever and still do a shit ton of damage. Whereas Shrek doesn't. I mean, part of it is reincarnations, I get that, but mine, to be honest, is already halfway done. So like, I have a pretty good handle on what she can do. Her damage isn't nearly the same without the follow-up. Um, and her survivability isn't nearly as good as Gilgamesh's either.
Nope.
So I feel like out of the two units, like Gilgamesh is seems superior so far.
I would
But
agree.
we probably knew that already.
I would agree. Right. And there's still always the question of like what unit is Resnick in, because if it's still a mono fire team, which is also possible, that's obviously where Gilgamesh would see a stronger weakness. But I do agree with you. He is much stronger than her. This diamond is no joke just because it's got basically two different kinds of mitigation dispel on it. I'm sorry, this bottom one here. Two different kinds of mitigations. It's shell and magic percent reduction, which is one of the few ways that people are mitigating magic damage nowadays. He can still get rid of this. The AoE shred is obviously still amazing, but it's also a double hit. And so Resnick's heal, her regular heal, is a 2-hit magic barrier. This gets rid of it in that one attack, whereas Shreka does not have the double hits. It is on the sub job here, but you're not using this ability. So to your point, yeah, Gilgamesh obviously does way more to still like do the damage he wants to do, whereas she struggles just a bit more. And he has naturally much higher penetrations too, just because of how he uses this spirit pen ability. That he's up to 90 spirit pen in most instances. Shreka never gets that high. And the same thing for her magic res pen. She's tapped out at like 50. Gil can easily hit like 70 plus. No questions asked. So yeah, he does way more. I agree with your take 100%.
It's kind of a tough meta right now because I feel like you really don't like with Resnick on the field. You really don't want to take physical. I'm sorry, magical damage against her. But really, those are like among the best options we have at the moment. And like even Joom like doesn't really feel that great again. Like her bear like Joom is really suffering because of just the short range barrier break.
Fair.
So I feel like she need like Joom like in order to like really push back in a meaningful way in the meta. I feel like she really is missing that and needing that utility to. But on the other hand, Resnick is sealing everybody's barrier breaks. So it's kind of
Correct.
like, what are you supposed to do?
Exactly. Exactly. Completely agreed. But no, we'll move on to some JP news here now. And Trials of Mana has gotten some more eyes on it, some more analysis now that we actually have the units released. KT7 actually came out with a little bit of an opinion. We won't highlight it here, but representative of the JP communities that they're mostly underwhelmed right now, where they're not in love with the units. They don't feel like very powerful 100 cost units. I do anticipate doing a little bit of a reaction video to that because I think there's some validity to it. But at the same time, I don't think it's nearly as bad as maybe some of the feedback I've heard. I do think both of these units are probably tougher to make work, and Duran is certainly more niche, in my opinion, against one damage type than Angela is. But yeah, word on the street that the collaboration is mid. Have you looked into these at all? Like, what are you thinking about the collaboration so far?
I mean, I have looked at them. I've kind of done my normal review, like looked over their stats, looked over their kits. I think that they're fine. Like I don't think that they're OP. I don't think they're overpowered. I don't they're probably not going to be meta tier units, but honestly, do we really need to be like resetting the meta every 2 months? We really don't want that. Like that's part of the fatigue. That's part I know people are excited about and get hyped up about the collaboration. So when they're not like that next level, it is a little bit disappointing, especially for people like that love this particular series. That's certainly disappointing. But I don't know. Duran is a free unit. I've heard people, 'cause they say he's not a good enough tank. He's not a good enough damage dealer. He's kind of just pretty good at a lot of different things. And that's fine. Like, that he's a valuable piece probably going forward in that knight group that has a lot of strong bruisers and they don't necessarily need a full-time tank. Maybe they just need a distraction player, an off tank. But he's a building block for that group going forward, I would say. And I think that, if you do build around his damage, his penetrations are not DPS caliber, but they're pretty
They're
decent.
not
Like I
far
think that
off.
yeah, I think if you build in that direction, like he can do decent damage. And he can set up Shrek too with the imperils. So
Can I interject
yeah,
for a second on that note? Because I want
yeah,
to piggyback off that. So the first thing I wanted to call out was, I'm pretty sure that JP has not been using them in regular Guild War. There is no data here on votive stats on those units, and I take that to mean that they're either in limited Guild War at the moment or something's going on. So if they're taking arena data and applying conclusions, I'm gonna immediately say that they're wrong because we know that arena is very much skewed in terms of objective meta takeaways. It's the blind matchups like class match and free match and Guild War where you can kind of feel a unit's strength more reliably. So that's number one.
funny enough, JP was also in limited, and theirs also got canceled.
Oh, okay,
Supposedly due to the same bug, I think.
interesting.
So that's kind of weird.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, so if that's the case, I really would take the initial impressions with a slight grain of salt. But I on the Shrek note, I'll be honest, I don't know how this unit functions without Shreka. I'll say that number one. If they're not playing him with Shreka, and maybe they're not because it's limited to Guild War or Arena, who knows what, this unit, there's so much in him that is dependent upon Dispel Seal. That Shreka needs to be there to seal Dispel. And so, like, when I think about the ways that he leverages, number one, all of his buffs, if you look at them, or most of his buffs, are the kinds of buffs that are covered by regular, good old fashioned dispel. So if you're going against Sephiroth, or really a variety of different units that can dispel, this is where he finds his first weakness. Where number one, his AoE here, this defense and spirit buff, that is dispellable. Number two, the same thing here for like his self buff, the 25 AoE res, dispellable. The aura effects here, we learned a while ago that aura effects, when you get hit by an enemy with dispel, if the aura effect is under the umbrella of dispellable effects, for the damage calculation of that one hit, it will dispel them for the purposes of damage calculation. Now it's going to come right back, and the aura doesn't actually go away. But from a damage calc perspective, that's the whole video we did with Volk, where we found out that Volk can seal enemy buff removal, and that was part of the reason to protect his own aura, because his aura is unit res. It's the same thing here. This unit res and this defense, if you're getting hit by a Sephiroth, these teammates will not get any of this aura effect. It'll be dispelled in that damage calculation. So that's where I look at this unit, particularly when I see that he's got a niche for reducing enemy defense pen. He can reduce 20 here, and he can reduce 30, so up to 50 on this attack. If he's not maintaining that super high defense stat, and neither is your teammates from this, yeah, he's not going to feel great. So I don't know how you play this unit without Shrek, quite frankly. Like, I just don't know how that's possible. So I think that could be part of it. And particularly, I don't know who's using him with the card or not, but like Guild War map, that extra 9 defense here, that adds up into it too. Yeah, that's my first thought on Duran.
I do think that he goes fairly well with the new Lilith unit too, as kind of two heavy debuffers. Like she's debuffing the slash attack. He can debuff the defense pen there. So you can do like a considerable debuffing angle with
Yeah.
those two units. I don't know how great it's going to be in practice, but at least in theory, like that sounds pretty good against some units out there anyway.
I agree. I feel like we could dispel the notion of him being a tank as well. I think that's an option, but I don't think I he's purely a tank. His only hate in the kit is on this passive of the 5 hate, which means it's gone in 3 hits and it never returns again. I think this is optional though. I don't think you have to run him this way. You certainly could, but I think if you were going like full offensive DPS, I see no reason why you couldn't go for the 80 slash pen or go for the extra
Yeah,
attack and accuracy. I think if people are trying to force him to be a tank, maybe that's where they're running into issues where yeah, no shit, he can't take 6 hits in the game. No one could take 6 hits in the game. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah,
yeah.
he's not your prototypical tank. So I do question, are they using him appropriately? So that's my first thought on the Duran feedback.
He reminds me a little bit. I mean, a little bit of Snow in a way,
Oh, I think
where
go somewhere else. Okay, yep.
yeah, he's got like the just a little bit of hate, and and then that's it. He can't regenerate it in any way, and he is more damage focused. Like Snow was, so he's kind of like maybe just more of like a modern tank on that archetype that he was, just which is basically just a bruiser. He does have the double heal back, which pretty cool too. First time we've seen that. And then he does have the innate honeycomb too. So I don't know. There's some good stuff about this unit. I don't think that it's a bad unit. Is it a meta unit? Probably not. But I think that we're going to be able to do some things with him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then um we covered the vision card. Yeah, there's really nothing else here I wanted to add. I do think it's noteworthy the defense pen is here too, because that is one of his weaknesses in the kit innately. I think he gets what? Where is it?
I think he just has 20 on his weapon, maybe,
Correct. He only has
and then
20 on the weapon.
and then he
Oh,
has the
oh,
buff.
this but it's only for this attack. Right. So 20 sucks on a weapon, but get him to 40 with this, better. But he's got the AoE res pen as well, so that kind of alleviates some of that pain. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But yeah, we'll move on here to Angela, who um, is a staff devout, yeah,
Devout.
dark unit, and I agree. Some of this unit is probably not what you want to see from your mage because she's not a nuker. And we're used to a lot of mages being really hard hitting damage dealers. I think the most popular mages, you think of Helena, obviously from the staff black mage, but she would just nuke people. Skall comes to mind. Even maybe Vivi to a slighter extent. He was really never known for like enormous damage though. Um, but even like someone like Shrek, who has eye popping numbers sometimes, I don't think Angela is necessarily at that same level because she does come in with some below average spirit pen. If you're looking at her passives, trying to pick and choose only 2 of them, you'd made this observation. Spirit pen is not a favorable passive here for her. And so you do get the magic res pen of 40, but the spear pen access is only on her second buff here. It's only the 40. That being said, she's like Duran. Uh, she's got on hit effects. Where are you here? AoE res pen of 30 on critical hit for her attacks. And I think her weapon has some too. Somewhere has it. Is it? Oh, it's the card. Another 20. So you're talking 50 AoE res pen. I'll be honest, that's the same, if not better. I think it's better, quite frankly, than spirit penetration. And there does seem to be a lot in her kit where she is more of a bruiser magic damage dealer, in my opinion, where she gets some of these like mid fight physical damage reductions. She's got the innate 15% AoE wide res here. Um, there were some other things I can't remember what it was, but yeah, she's more to me more of a brawler style than a nuker. But I'll pause there. What do you think about Angela?
I think that she's pretty good. I think that there's a couple of misses for me that hold her back from probably being like, top of the line, meta class unit. It's that she doesn't have an on-demand barrier break. I think she just has it on her limit burst.
It's a good one.
The the uh, the kind of unique passive they gave her is kind of a cool concept and it's a cool idea, but at that point you're relying on somebody dying, which
Could you explain that?
doesn't.
I don't think everyone knows what that does.
Yeah, so this untranslated effect, basically, when somebody on your team dies, Angela is getting a huge power up here. She's getting uh, she's getting like a increase to her magic damage, I think, of 20%, and then also a reduction in physical and magical damage of 20%, something like that.
Which stacks
So
with the stuff in the kit.
which stacks, yeah. So if she's got all her buffs online and this comes online after somebody dies, it's like a 40%, 45% reduction in both physical and magical damage that she can get, which is essentially like having Glassy and Dario in front of you and with their auras, which
Yep.
is pretty strong. So she can definitely take the damage and mitigate the damage. She's got a lot of tools for it. Her damage is just not like next gen, like next, it's decent. Um, so I mean I don't know what it I don't know what's I don't know I don't really know what else to say about her. I mean, like she's definitely meant like to have with Cypher in mind. I think that they're kind of go hand in hand. Um,
Yep.
and Devout and Warrior, it's not necessarily like the greatest overlap, but they have a couple of cards. But they do have the mono dark angle. So I don't know. I think that like the general feelings is mostly concerning about Angela because she's the gotcha unit. There's only so much you can say about a free unit. So I think a lot of people have been disappointed with her specifically. And I think there is something like you. I think the main thing is that passive, and then some of the like the barrier break, because the Resnick obviously is one of the most like we said, one of the most influential units out there, and kind of giving that mid fight barrier right now.
I agree. Yeah, to me, this is just the kind of unit where you want to ask the question like, where and why would you use her? I think that's probably a tough one to answer for me personally because I don't really see anything in here that's like, oh man, like this would be perfect. I really need this right now. Like the reduced counter chance of 100. This is kind of valuable, but there's enough reaction block from a handful of units. I don't know if this is like game changing like it used to be. It's still really good. Don't get me wrong. Dispel courage, like there's a lot of that right now. That's not necessarily unique either. The on hit effects, these are only for her, so there's really no team fight application here. It's the AoE res pen and it's absorb damage. So this is a very selfish buff as opposed to a buff that passes things on to allies. So when I look at the kit, she does have some things here like the remove AoE wide res. That's certainly a thumbs up, but it's the kind of thing that's like, well, there's a couple units that can do that as well. I just don't see a place where I'm like, man, she really solves a need, other than adding a dark unit for people that love the dark element. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. As far as I see it, like she absolutely needs Cypher's Imperil for the AoE shred.
Yep.
Because with that, like she doesn't have any Imperils kind of
None.
baked in, and that's her damage isn't going to look as good without that.
Yep.
Um, I have seen like some talk about like the AP deprivation angle because her LB I think reduces by 40.
Only one person though. I don't know if I love that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like I don't even necessarily love that because yeah, this is just a single target and then you're done. Like she does have the Grimoire Keeper though, which you can get the you'd have to use that in lieu of another buff though.
Right. You'd have to not use this buff, which is the regen, the only spirit pen, the AoE res, and the minus hate of 6. Like it's not a bad buff, but I guess you could maybe flex this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She does have the Grimoire Keeper barrier too.
Good
For the
call out.
7500 HP.
Good call out.
So yeah, I think that I would use either of those Grimoire buffs, I think, over that Spirit Pen, because to be honest, there isn't really that much spirit in the meta,
No.
at least right now. So
That's why I think the AoE res pen is more beneficial than the spirit pen. I think people get caught up on that because we've been looking at that for so long. But people's AoE res is typically way higher than whatever their spirit level is. So if you can penetrate the AoE res, which is it just I think you probably get more bang for your buck that way.
so I wonder if in their builds are they really emphasizing the crit rate, because it seems to me you would want to get it as high as possible to have that online as much as possible,
Agreed.
because then she wouldn't be as heavily reliant on a Cypher and his debuffs if she can get that 50% AoE res pen in perpetuity, essentially.
Yeah, and her vision card, yeah, I think this is great. A free 20% no matter what. I still think that's really great. But these aren't like awful stats either. You're getting the very high 24 unit res. 40% magic certainly isn't the eye-popping number, but I don't think it needs to be with these new anniversary units. 40% of her base magic's still really great, and 20 crit evade. Like I think that's valuable for all these follow up attacks and for just general damage purposes. Like I like that. I think it's a good card too. I haven't really looked at the overlaps yet as hard as I probably should have, but yeah,
This card, I think, for me, is carried by the bestowed effect.
yeah, I agree.
The other stuff, like,
It's replaceable.
I mean, yeah, because like Devout already has like the Silver Memories card for AoE res and
Crit evade,
60% magic and the 20 crit evade. Like it's one
correct.
of the better cards in their arsenal.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I think like, but you definitely want that bestowed for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, I mean, I can see why they're maybe a little bit let down. Crimson Wizard is definitely being looked at very highly to see if he can kind of save the collaboration. Obviously, there's a vision card coming with him as well. I'm intrigued just because he's a fire magic unit. That type of fire magic unit hasn't always been extremely strong. I'm curious to see if they buck the trend with that at all. But fire's in a really good place here too, which I don't hate because I do still see it as a potential rock paper scissors scenario where that gives Joom some inherent value still, and obviously Summer Glassy and even Kadash, who we slept on for a very long time. That unit is holding up far longer than either of us predicted, and I think still has room to grow if Crimson Wizard comes in and is still really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people in our guild are still doing great with him. Seeing other people using him, he's been phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely underrated by us and most of the community.
yep.
I did want to say, like, Crimson Wizard going to be a glove unit. There was actually some interesting findings by the data miners just in the past couple of days with some references to Sottily as well being an Earth glove unit. So it looks like we could be going back to the glove teams here potentially in the short future if Crimson Wizard ends up being next level, which he certainly could be. A lot of these, like, last release of the collaborations have tended to be the most powerful ones. If you think about like Sephiroth and, even going back to like Bradley and some, and I think even Vivi was the last unit and from his collaboration. Um, but yeah, that could be interesting to see what they do there.
Can I just address something Crimson Lights just pointed out? Her
Mhm.
buff isn't selfish absorb, it's remove HP absorb upon hit. Are you saying that's a mistranslation here on Woad of Stats? Because that's not what Woad of Stats is saying. This is very clearly absorb damage done for self. I don't know if you're seeing something different in JP, that this is a mistranslation. If that's the case, if her buff here is remove damage absorb on hit, that would actually be pretty good. If you can remove enemies' capability to absorb damage, that's a really popular survival mechanic nowadays. This would make her immediately much better, but I don't think that's the case.
I would agree with that. That
Yeah,
that would be very compelling because most of the meta units have that absorb effect.
absolutely. Exactly. But that's really all we want. Oh, the Young Sadali. If I had to guess, I don't think it's Young Sadali. I think it's a new version. Right now, I just finished the new story quest today that dropped from the new lore. I think we're getting to the point of the Realm Scourge fight, and obviously JP is like a couple storylines ahead of us. That I think Sadali might be entering the fray again, lore wise, against the Realm Scourge, and perhaps they're giving him a second version of his unit for kind of like how King Mont got like the new Mont upgrade. Sottile I
Yeah.
think, gonna likely get the new Sottile upgrade now that he's kind of like shed his wolf's cloak, if you know what I mean. But that's my hope. I,
That
I I do like the character.
that would be cool too. I haven't caught up yet in the story, so I'll be interested to once I get there.
It's been very cool. I'm loving the lore. I get a good, and I said this in Discord. I need to say it here too. The new Farplane event with Shreka was absolutely down the middle, awesome. It's exactly what I'm looking for in the lore. There was a bunch of like truth bombs they dropped in terms of like world building and lore and new characters, logistics, and there's like scene choreography to it too. I want more of that. I think it's compelling. I know it can't be like 3D graphics and voice acting. I don't think it needs it. I think what they did with this Fireplane event was awesome, and I think the main storyline quest is starting to accelerate a little bit. I'm looking forward to some of that resolution too. But even the main story has taken turns with like Lucille that I did not expect. She is a bona fide villain. Very very cool addition that I did not see coming in the last hour or the 11th hour, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the Sharika story as well. There was some stuff that we didn't know about in there too. Like apparently Jaden has a brother, so I wonder what that's all about.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I want to know more there.
And apparently found out. I think I found out who Jaden's brother is. I think I might have glimpsed it on the JP spoiler. I'm not going to say it. We're not going to say it here. But if it is who it is, very cool. But then we found out like the people of Yazog, like Garvel and all them, apparently come from beyond the falls, which is where Shrek from. So I do wonder if like the people of Yazog have some connection there, if she's a member of them. Um, and then what was the other thing I found out? Whatever.
And how did Raldor end up such a chump in the game if that's the case?
I know. Awful, awful. But we're at that 115. That was all we wanted to cover tonight. We could take a couple minutes talk about Sword of Convalaria if you want. I know we were kind of chit chatting about that beforehand. What's your experience right now with, or unless you want to talk about the Q&A with the game, what do you want to do here?
I was gonna say, why don't we take some questions for a few minutes?
Yeah, whatever anyone in the chat wants. If you want us to talk about SOC, let us know. If you have Q&A of the game,
Sure.
if you have stuff you want us to answer there too, rapid fire them. Now's the time to get them out. We'll obviously keep an eye on it and try to answer everything that we can, but feel free. I mean, yeah, this
Connor Man says Ninja Blade and Dagger teams forgotten in the sewage.
gone.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Especially Ninja Blade, because at least Dagger has gotten some cards, like in the past year.
Yep.
Ninja Blade has gotten absolutely nothing, since Yuffie. I think randomly they were on like the newest JP card, I want to say, maybe on one of the trials cards.
They were.
And then that was their first one, I think, since Sildra.
Doopy, killing time. Doopy asked, what did you have for lunch? I had a chicken cutlet sandwich. What did you have for lunch?
I had sushi.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Spicy tuna.
I like it. Good choice. I think you're right. One of the recent, was it this one? Might have been the, yeah. Ninja Blade? Ninja Blade? Yeah. It's the Lilith card. That's the Ninja Blade.
Oh, Lilith card. Okay.
Oh, did you hear what the JP dev said in the last stream about updating older units? And if so, what do you think they will do? I didn't hear anything about that, quite frankly. Did you hear anything about them updating older units?
I think that they didn't really go in depth into it, but I think they just acknowledged that they're aware that the power creep is an issue and that they're going to be working on something. But no, I don't think that they really shared any more details than that. But at least it was an acknowledgement. It would be nice to hear more about that. I'm definitely interested. I think that it's my only sort of pause about that is that I don't want it to be the slow drip again. Once this, just put out the full solution so that we can get back to all those units at once, rather than, over the next year, like we've talked about. So
I agree. I know for me, when we talk about brainstorming answers, we've mentioned time and time again, I think the easiest lift for them is like half cost reincarnations of everything. Mind spheres for certain units. Pick the pool. But even then, I'll be honest, that won't solve it because I've reincarnated some older units. They're still not usable, even with the reincarnation stats. So I only think that's one piece of the puzzle because new units, the abilities are still far superior than any of the abilities in the old things. So I would think you need to maybe potentially update the job abilities like they did. They went through once and like upgraded all the generic jobs. That still doesn't answer the problem of the unique 100 cost jobs that they're going to get left behind. So there's still work to be done there. In a perfect world, I think it would just require maybe somewhat of a new system where maybe you go for like, I hate to say it, but like level 160 instead of level 140, and you come up with something creative like now you can equip 3 passives instead of 2. Like I think that to me would give somewhat of an advantage to say all of a sudden now these older units, maybe they had 2 defense pen passives, now they're going to do both. Maybe they had accuracy passives they couldn't equip, now they can equip them. And those small little like something to that effect. I don't know what else you could do though. Yeah.
it's kind of tough because the new age abilities, I think on their own, were already shutting out the old units,
Right.
not to mention the stats. Because like you think about reaction block, you think about the new styles of barriers that have come out, the new styles of area resist with the wide res and things like that. And the old units have no tech to deal with any of that stuff.
Nope.
So they're, even if they were on the same playing field when it comes to stats, um, yeah, they need more.
Yeah. Someone asked, who's the best units to besides Gilgamesh and Seth to pair with Resnick and Shrek? For a person who just came back to the game, honestly, if you're back to the game, it's a tough one to answer because I don't know exactly who you would have. I know off the top of my head, for me, for Shrek, if you're just playing casually, I think Mono Wind is still fine. But if you are playing and seeing a lot of Gilgamesh, Shrek's a tough one because staff black mage units are also tough. I still think Young Helena is an option for a newer account because you probably did pull her and use her. Resnick can
Yeah,
really
I
go with
was playing
anyone.
around with Helena today with Shrek, and it was actually pretty decent. Not amazing, but it was, she could do a thing or two.
Yeah. Um, it's a tough one too because I just don't know what you have for vision cards. So if you're just coming back and you haven't stocked up the vision cards, really hard to give a generic recommendation, unfortunately. Um, but stick with the mono element. I think is probably the easiest answer if that makes sense. Not ideal.
Yeah,
Uh,
Dario could be good in there with Sephiroth and Shrek.
yep. Agreed. Agreed. Uh, Crimson Lights asks, who are we most excited for? Are you saying in terms of like new units? Is there any units on your short list vision that you want to see of like anybody?
Um, I mean, in terms of what we know about, I think that I'm most excited for Ramada, just because I like that character. Even though like she's not like going to be a meta unit, I'm still interested in that character, and I think that she's actually, since Resnick has come out, I think that she's gotten a little bit of bump in play in JP. Um, Outside of units that we know about, I think that, I don't know. I'd like to see another like Final Fantasy rerun, like 5 or 9, to kind of brush up some of those characters. And of course, my most wanted out of everything is tactics, and I'm glad that they did at least mention that they're going to be bringing that back in that live stream as well.
I would agree with that. And Crimson Lights will also be very happy that you said Ramada because they are one that I talked to Crimson personally and they're going all in on Ramada, so I'm sure happy to hear your endorsement. For me,
Very nice.
mainline lore characters, I don't know how deep they're gonna go into this is kind of a spoiler if you haven't played the story in the last, I don't know, 4 months. They introduced one of the holders of the cursed blades. He's one of the ninjas, and he's a very dark and creepy dude. And I honestly forgot his name at the moment, but I thought I was blown away that they created the art and the model for this guy. It's like he's like Medusa kind of hair, like glowing red eyes, and very interesting art. I would love to see him in the game, for just because he's so different than the archetypes. And the only other unit I can think of, there was some copium that I was joking about the katana unit. I don't think they're gonna run any of the young units again. I think that was a one-time thing, quite frankly. So I think Young O is kind of like out. But Baral is actually like had a little bit of like a run there lore wise of being featured, and he's a katana user. They gave him this like weirdly cool condition of congenital analgesia. I don't know how to say it, which means he can't feel pain. I feel like there's like something cool here to make out of this unit. I don't think he looks that cool, quite frankly, but like if I'm checking off the list of all the lore units that haven't been in yet, he's one that I'm still having fun with. That's all
I
I got.
mean, you kind of willed Grifford into the game a couple of years ago, so you're doing your best to get Baral into the game now. I like it.
I'm trying. But no, couple more questions here. Rumor about Justin not being with Square. That's not true. I never heard that at all. I still talk to Justin. He never mentioned any of that. I don't think that's true. But someone else also said false, so I would dispel that. Anything else here they're seeing for Q&A? Uh, flat.
Shadow says, I
Hmm.
think they said no new units for the Final Fantasy Tactics collab, and that's what I heard as well. But I'm choosing to ignore that and hope that they put out new units anyway.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I really just don't know why. Why not? Literally, you don't have to pay royalties to anybody, as far as I know. It's Square, unless there's some weird contract thing with Yoshida. I don't even know what would stop them.
Especially like with Sword of Convalaria out, and really people gravitating towards that game specifically because they love tactics and that kind of lore, and even like the look of the game is drawn heavily from tactics. Like, it's a good way to kind of save some of your audience or bring them back if you kind of really invest into that IP, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. Um, 1 second. Get the picture here.
Garusa.
Open image. Can I view the image, please? Thank you. There we go. For those of you who did not know what I was talking about, this is the character. It just feels very non-War of the Video. It's cool. I'll take it. That's Garusa. That's who I was referencing before as one of the new storyline characters.
Yeah,
But
he's pretty interesting.
yeah, I think that's really it. Flat Planet made the observation they're surprised how well Squall is performing against some of the next gen units. I'll be honest, I'm kind of surprised to hear that too. We done some testing with Squall. It's not awful. I've never won reliably with him though. He holds up well, but I'm still losing fights against almost all meta teams. I don't think there's a single team where he's doing well. His buff rotation really just isn't all that great, and I couldn't find a very competitive or a very compelling TMR to make him really good. But we've always said, depending on where you play, the level of competition, there's always opportunities for some of these units to still do well. So I'm happy to hear that he's performing well for you. I don't think that's true at the top end of the game, but I'll never deny someone that's seeing results firsthand.
I was one that actually makes me think of one point back to the Trials of Mana units, and there is still to come a Trials of Reckoning item for those units.
Yep.
And there could be a significant upgrade or capability added in for them. We've seen them kind of go over the top on some of them before, so maybe they'll do that here as well. So
Yeah.
I don't think the book is closed on them yet.
Yep. Just a Crimson Lights. This talking about collaborations like tactics not being used, saying it's the same reason 14 is ignored. I know for a fact 14 is ignored because the creator of 14 does not like gotcha games, and it's his vehement opinion that he does not want them featured, and so that's a very much an internal political decision that he does not want his intellectual property being used in a game of this type. Um, and maybe that's true for the tactics creator too. Maybe that is part of it. Who knows? Yeah. I think that's basically it. Are MR units a thing in the past? I think so. MR units, yeah. I think it's 70 cost units are the new MR units.
I mean, in a 240 rule set, they're still used, but they're not like a substantial part of the team. Like in class match right now, you probably need an MR unit or below. Um, Actually, in the limited guild war that got canceled, you did need a 40 or 50 cost in there too. So
Yep. Um, Although you know what, I'm sorry, I won't say they're a thing of the past because units like Comral have come out, so they're not a thing of the past. They're just far more infrequent. I'm over exaggerating that. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I think that's the majority of the questions here. Anything else you want to address before we cut things off here? We're at an hour and 27 here.
No, I think that's a wrap.
I like it. All right, well, we'll pause here. I know usual time, but I think there was a lot to cover. There is still a lot of fun stuff coming out. I do feel like the game is kind of at a shifting point at the moment. Unfortunately, like we said, maybe Trials of Mana maybe not being a huge influence on the shift in the game, but still hopefully some shiny new units. And even then, we still know that there's stuff coming out in the future. And Global's always different than JP, quite frankly. We've always seen different results. I know for a fact we use Summer Glaciella with far more frequency than JP does. I know there's metas that we've not had to suffer through them because we got through it a little more creatively. So I do wonder if Global will see things a little bit differently than JP does, but I don't know. I think our overall perception of the game has not changed. We're still looking for more.
Yeah. At this point, I think that it's probably we're going to be waiting until the anniversary because that seems to be when they can get the dev cycles to invest a little bit into the game. My only hope is that whatever comes this anniversary is to make up for this kind of tough 6 months that they put us through, rather than installing more ways to give them money.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be the finality of the game if that's what they do.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. But All right, we'll pause there. Thank you so much for everybody for the questions, for the comments. Always appreciate you being here, and those watching after the fact. As always, comments, questions, critiques, throw them in the comment section below. We like to address everything that you guys bring up. This podcast is for all of you. And good luck pulling on Garuda if you're going for it this week. And we'll talk to you next Monday. I think that should be the next time slot. So